You ever look at a really successful organization and wonder how they did it? Well, I can tell you it's not luck. Just like you'd never build a skyscraper without a detailed blueprint, you can't build a great company without a strategic plan. So, how do they actually create that blueprint? What are the key ingredients? Let's dive in.
So let's start with that big question. What really is the difference between a great company and one that's, just fine? Well, a huge part of the answer is that the great ones had a solid plan before they ever even laid the first brick. It's all about knowing exactly where you're going and having a really good map to get there.
All right, so before we can build anything, we have to talk about the foundation. What exactly is planning, and why is it the absolute bedrock of any successful venture? At its heart, planning is really just about building a bridge from where you are right now to where you want to be in the future. It forces you to answer all those critical questions. What are we doing? How are we going to do it? When, where, and who's responsible? It's the first step that everything else depends on. Now, any great blueprint has two main goals, effectiveness and efficiency. And trust me, they are not the same thing. Effectiveness is about doing the right things, making sure you're working on what actually gets you closer to your goal. Efficiency is about doing those things right, using the least amount of time, money, and energy. You could be super efficient at, say, arranging paper clips by color, but if that has nothing to do with your main goal, it's not effective at all, is it? The trick is to nail both. So, who are the architects drawing up this master plan? Well, that's typically the job of senior management. Let's pull back the curtain a little and see how they actually put together the vision that guides the entire organization. And we're not talking about a plan for next week or next month. The strategic plan is the big picture. It's a long-range vision, usually looking out 3 to 5, sometimes even 10 years ahead. Think of it as the North Star for the company. It makes sure every single person, every team is building in the exact same direction. So how do they do it? Well, the process basically breaks down into 4 key steps. First, they've got to define the objectives. What are we actually trying to build here? Then, they take a hard look in the mirror and evaluate their own strengths and weaknesses. After that, they assess all the potential risks. And finally, they look out the window, forecasting what's happening in the outside world. Market trends, new tech, things that could be either a huge opportunity or a major threat. Of course, even the most perfect blueprint has to account for the unexpected. I mean, what happens if there's an earthquake or a huge storm rolls in? You've got to have reinforcements built into the structure. And this is where two really smart ideas come in. First, you've got contingency planning. This is your break glass in case of emergency plan. It's for unexpected disasters, and it's all about business continuity. Think of it like your building's fire escape. Then you have scenario planning, which is different. That's about imagining several plausible futures, like what if the economy booms or what if it tanks, and coming up with a strategy for each. It's less about escaping a fire and more about designing a building that can handle both a heat wave and a blizzard. Okay, so we've got the architect's grand vision. But how does that high-level blueprint actually translate into day-to-day instructions for every single person on the job? Well, this is where we zoom in on the detailed schematics. The first layer of detail is policies. The easiest way to think about these is as the building codes for the company. They're general guidelines that steer decision-making and make sure everyone is working to the same overall standard. Now we get even more specific. If policies are the building codes, then procedures are the step-by-step installation guides. They're these super specific directives that spell out exactly how a certain task needs to get done. No guesswork involved. And finally, at the most detailed level, you have rules. These are the hard hat area signs on the construction site. They are specific, they are detailed, and they are non-negotiable. They're there to restrict behavior to keep everyone safe and compliant. There's absolutely no wiggle room with rules. So a blueprint is totally useless if the people building the thing aren't on the same page. This last part is about the most crucial element of all, the people. How do you get everyone aligned, motivated, and working from the same set of plans? A really powerful way to do this is a philosophy called management by objectives, or MBO. And it's so much more than just a process. It's a whole mindset, an approach to management that's built on communication, responsibility, and really empowering people to take the lead themselves. The philosophy behind MBO is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It all comes down to trust. It's based on the idea that people fundamentally want to do a good job. They want to know what's expected of them, they're capable of managing themselves, and if you just give them a clear goal, they'll find the best way to get there. It's about leading, not micromanaging. So when we pull back and look at our finished skyscraper, what made it all work? Well, it all started with a crystal clear vision and realistic goals. But a plan is nothing without ways to monitor progress and give feedback. It also takes discipline and commitment from every single person to stick to that blueprint. And maybe most importantly, it takes real leadership to champion the vision and keep everyone inspired, from the ground floor all the way up to the penthouse.
And that kind of brings this whole thing home. Strategic planning isn't just for huge corporations. We all have a blueprint for our own lives, right? Whether we've written it down or not. So the real question to leave you with is this: how well is your plan built to handle the unexpected?